Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Alex Simmons, how are you?
I'm fine, Chris, and where the heck are you?
I'm in the void, but
You're in the void.
When you're deep into getting work done, you got to go in the void where nothing can distract you.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That'll be our episode today. That is our advice. Go into the void. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chris Ryan, writer of things, many things. You'll see some of them today. And that is Alex Simmons, legendary writer of things. Now, you can see the subtle difference. Writer of things, legendary writer of things. And that's how it is.
I'm a legend in his own mind. Yes.
We are here today to talk, we've been having some great guests, and we had that absolute fire episode talking about sinners. And if you haven't seen that yet, I mean, hang around, of course, because we're going to talk to you about some nice stuff, but make sure you go back and treat yourself for that, because we had Stephen Van Patten, a great writer, and all sorts of other things. And then we had Omar Holman, co-founder of Black Nerd Problems, and a wordsmith of so many different talents.
Yes.
And we were all four of us talking about this absolutely stunning movie. So go and see that episode. It's the last episode. But today we're going to talk about it's kind of practical stuff, We're being practical. And I know that for many of you, in all those episodes, how many episodes are we up to now?
369.
Yeah, hey now, 369. And this is the first time we're being practical. So it's a groundbreaking episode.
Yeah, right.
Ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to talk about a couple things. We're talking about, sometimes writers, creatives, they go through a thing or two, and sometimes it's about find themselves, it's harder to be creative. But other times it's kind of like you become a hermit, and the idea of getting back out there and getting back involved in the community. And we have some stuff to talk about that. We're going to use some of our work as kind of updates and what the experiences are. And we hope you can benefit from some of that, the pros, the cons, the challenges.
In particular, writing a story in a different voice than you might normally utilize when you are writing your short stories, your novels, your screenplays, whatever. Really taking that what if leap of faith, creative power dive, try something different.
Yeah. And we have a couple of
executed. Yes.
A couple of hints as to how you might find your way in.
Yep.
So if you're struggling about who should be the speaker of this piece and that kind of stuff, and how do I find that person's voice, we got some stuff for you today.
And stick around for the end, because I will make a statement. I have a statement to share, which I think will bring to full fruition a lot of the things that we're talking about during this episode. I think this will be the nice little cherry on top at the end.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I think that's like this with a cherry on top. Sounds like
anyway, you're going to find that little bit of advice useful, so stick around till the end.
So those are the things we're going to do. I guess we should just get in there and do them, Alex.
So let's start with something that you just came back from.
Yes.
That actually does stay with us, folks. This is going to make all kinds of sense in a moment. We were talking about Hermit and everything, but this guy just went to a big event.
Yes.
What was it called, Chris?
Alex has been encouraging me and coaching me to get out there and to be, and I found myself, I think part of it came from COVID, and part of it came from like physical and emotional exhaustion. When I retired, it was a really hard school year, but that's a couple of years back, and I've gotten better and I've gotten stronger. And with the help of our Writers Association in New York, who invited me a couple of different times to go and read in this tiny little bar called the Shade Bar down in the Village. Great, great bar. And I did that a couple of times and found that I didn't implode or explode. So sometimes you need to discover that or rediscover that. This weekend, I participated with about 900 other people.
Just a small gathering, right?
in a thing called Stoker Con, which is the International Horror Writers Association's annual conference. So people come from actually all over the world, of course, mostly from the North American continent. So I was concerned that all of that I'd have a new attack of it, of, oh shit, I shouldn't be here and all that sort of stuff. And
Little imposter syndrome thing, huh?
real big attack on an imposter system. And I'm here to tell you that it happened to me 3 times over the weekend. Go up to the nearest person and say hello. And one time it was people I knew, so that was the easier one. But the other 2 times it was people I didn't know or knew peripherally and that kind of stuff. And they were nice. So there was only one person who responded to my hellos this last weekend, with attitude of some kind. And ironically, I had wanted to say to him, I just want to thank you. It was a couple of years ago at the Denver Stoker Con. I found that I was really struggling breathing. And I would go up my room and try and find a place where I could calm down. And out of panic, I grabbed the souvenir anthology and the art that was provided in here and the material to read connected so strongly with me that I calmed down and I was able to breathe. And I thought that he would enjoy hearing that, but the attitude was, I was like, okay, just saying good morning and keep going.
What was it like for you?
I got lucky a
900
couple of different
people.
times. Yeah, I got there Thursday and, we did a few things and all that stuff. But Thursday night, the poet goddess of the Horror Writers Association is a woman named Linda Addison. It would be amazing to try and have her on sometime, but I'm not sure if we're there yet because she's an international poet, and all that stuff. But I think she will eventually say yes. I haven't even asked her yet. She has an open mic for poetry. And I read in Denver. It was the first time I read from Privilege. Privilege was only in its fledgling state. But I went there and I was like, I'm going to see if I could get myself to read. The room is packed. There's people in every row, and most of the rows are filled. And she goes around, and eventually it becomes my turn. And there are so many people connected to Privilege there that on my way up the aisle, because that's how big it was, I said, all right, my name is Chris Ryan, and this is my first book of poetry. It's called It's Been a Privilege. And it was inspired, and I'm passing Carol Geisander, who's been on the show, and she's a co-chair of the New York chapter, but she's also co-host of Galactic Terrace. I said, a couple of years ago, I was watching Galactic Terrace, co-hosted by Carol, and Sarah Tantlinger was reading. And I don't know why, but what she was reading just got me writing. And I wound up, in the time that she's reading, and they read for maybe 10 minutes, I wrote what became the first 5 poems of this book. And Linda was kind enough to allow me to read one of these fledgling poems at the open mic in Denver. And then Alien Buddha Press, who is from Denver or Colorado, they published it. And then I pointed to another friend of our show, Rebecca Cuthbert, who was there. And I said, Rebecca gave us this beautiful cover. I said, and 3 rows behind her, I said, and Teal James Glenn gave this blurb. So this is an opportunity for me to say thank you to so many people by reading from. And then I read it, and Linda had a great reaction to it, and the place had a great reaction to it. So that filled me with, like, okay, I'm allowed to be here. Sometimes,
Yep.
And there's your confirmation. So when doubt creeps up, now I had this confirmation, but wait, there's more.
Oh.
They went through everybody. And then they said, we have a little more time. Anyone else? And this guy, his name was Tim. He said, I got something. He said, he gets up there and he says, I was a federal worker funding just got just decimated, and I got laid off with most of my office. I'm up here trying to heal myself by Stoker Con. So I'll read some stuff. We read a few things. And she says, anybody else? And I said, if you don't mind, I have something that I think would follow Tim really well, considering the unfortunate incident. And I went up and I said, shortly after Privilege, watching current events, I had another explosion of poetry, and I asked Alien Buddha Press, and they were really interested in it. They published it, called me a fierce poet, and that poem is a completely different kind of horror, and it's called America, We Need to Talk. And that got a big round of applause. And then I read Ossified from there, and that got applause. So I wound up getting 2.5, 3 really good experiences in that one session. And that was like within hours of arriving. Excellent. So everything else was gravy for me for the weekend. Even the mistake I made, I was okay to live with. So what I mean by that is we're from the Bronx. We don't go anywhere without gifts. Usually it's what, Entenmann's, right? But I didn't want to bring Entenmann's for 900. So what I did was I made 2 things. I had printed up a 2-sided bookmark. One had the Soul Scream logo and my QR code, and the other one had most of the covers, including the upcoming cover. I think Annihilation was the only thing missing. We ran out of space, but so I gave those away. I had printed up 500 of them. I think I have 100 or 150 left, maybe 100. So they really went, which is great. And then I printed up like a 32-page staple bounded sampler of Soul Scream and Thalazine featuring the Revenant, because my thing is I only buy one-time rights. So if I wanted to reprint for this thing, your story, in my heart, I would have to pay you again. But screw me, I don't have to pay me. So I just used stuff that I had written.
Your stuff that you got, yeah,
you know, and
repurpose.
And what is her name? Christy Aldridge had done some art for me. So I used it on the cover, and then I did a little feature explaining each person, because she had done individual characters drawings. So there was some art in it and all that stuff. I printed up 100 of those, and I have 15 or 20 of them left. I just didn't go back and grab that. So they all went out. Now, they had the back cover just as a kind of a humorous. I made the whole back cover the QR code. So I just thought that was funny. You
can't miss that. Yeah.
But I did miss an opportunity, because these were going and the bookmarks were going. So there was some awareness of Soul Scream. But I hadn't signed up for the mass signing. I had been at the mass signing in Denver, and my table was the table, and so was every other artist or writer that I was in my row. We were the table that they passed on their way to wait in line for bigger names. So I didn't want to experience that again, so I didn't sign up, right? Once I saw how well these things were going and how many people were picking up, I thought, man, if I had gone and just put Soul Scream out, I think I would have gotten some more recognition, and that would have been a good move. But I was able to live with that. Okay, all right.
Lesson learned.
Your first goal was to get people to take these. So, ladies and gentlemen, the teachable moment there is get up and read. Put something for people. Now, freebie, that's usually an easier sell, but then think it through. Is there an opportunity to allow them to take action on what they were interested in enough to pick up? And that I can live with that, but there you go. They had a lot of great people reading, not all of them famous, some of them. So I went to a lot of readings. I went to a lot of panel discussions, which covered everything from representation and legal and getting your marketing independent books, to discussions of monsters and classics, to isolation and depression. There was a whole panel on recognizing it and dealing with it was really cool. So it was the full gamut, and I watched a lot of. And then there were classes. I took a class with Tim Wagoneer. He had the horror hero story, and I
Okay.
taught hero's journey for 20, 25 years. So I wanted to see what the compare and contrast was, and I picked up a couple of things. I thought that was interesting. So going to conventions like this, the takeaway that I'd like to share with you is try, go,
Do.
but also allow yourself to enjoy and observe. And a couple of things that I learned is that, I didn't sign up for any panels because I wanted to measure myself against so that I knew where I stood in comparison. I can serve on those panels as well as at least half the people I saw on panels. So that made me a little more confident. And oh, okay. Yeah, I could have spoken intelligently about this or
Mm,
about that. And that's a big win when
good.
you've been struggling to get out of here.
Get out of here. Getting back on the trail, getting back out. You
Yeah,
had started this by saying sometimes you sort of sequester yourself or you become a
I
hermit.
have. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned COVID and then you mentioned some other things. What was it? What do you think is the benefit of a writer? Because I mean, that's what we are, a writer. What's the benefit of a writer getting out there? I mean, why do we have to get out there? What do we gain from that?
One, a sense of community. And I was really able to feel a strong sense of community. The people who have all won and are all came up together, they hang out together. There's nothing wrong with that. But so many of them, I mean, with only one exception, so many of them, you say hello, fantastic. One of the biggest names was Brian Keene. On Thursday night, I saw him. I was at the bar for religious purposes. And I turned around and there he was. And I don't want to be fanboy, so I don't run over to people. But I did raise my glass and Tim, he loved that, raised it back. And saw him the next day and gave him a wave. Just kept going. And the third time he says, I'm seeing you. How you doing? And he happened to be sitting with F. Paul Wilson, who was the Repairman Jack series. He wrote The Tomb, which became a pretty popular movie. But the Repairman Jack series, he had written one book, and fans wouldn't let him rest for 10 years until he wrote, I think he probably wrote 10 more novels with that character. And I know he had some health problems and had lost his wife recently. Rather than fanboy or anything, that was what I wanted to express. So instead of saying, I love you, he doesn't want to hear that shit again. I just asked how he was doing. He seemed to appreciate that. And then I said, my condolences. Brian had gone through some health tests and stuff, and I said, how's that going? And fine. And then I realized that, it was like kind of a round booth, and I had been facing those two, but sitting right in front of me where I couldn't see him was a third person. And I didn't want to be rude. So I said, sir, I can't see who you are, but how are you? How's your
Yeah.
health? And they all thought that was funny. When you get those little moments, just remember, if you're there as a professional, then take on that role. If you're there as a fan, behave in that way. But I like to conduct myself as a fellow professional, and it was well received. Let's just say that.
So we get a certain sense of community. What else do you get from
Well,
going?
there are so many people that I said hello to or sat with and talked to that I hadn't known, and now I know. And one or two, three of them, I asked for their work to put in the upcoming Soul Scream because
Hmm.
it was just so rivetingly good and so appropriate to our kind of wide, loose theme that I explained what it was, and I was 3 for 3. What else can you get? You can get a sense that you belong. And remember, I went in prone to saying you don't belong here. So being able to say that is a private thrill, but it's a real teachable moment that if you try, you're going to find, with very few exceptions, that, yeah, it's good business for them. They don't know exactly who you are, so they want to alienate you and then have to be, crap, later on if something you do hits. I found it very comforting and relaxing, and I left different than I arrived. You know, and that is not as much a concern for me as it once was. And then, of course, I came back. I guess it was Tuesday. I got an invitation to drive out to Brooklyn, you know, and see a reading and stuff. And I'm like, oh God, I'm 63. Driving out at 9 o'clock or whatever time it is to Brooklyn.
But you can sleep late.
Yeah, but I never do. But yeah, so I still have to get that. And the next thing is to reinforce by finding other places, you know, local events. You know, there's a thing in where was Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
They just had a Sleepy Hollow Arts Fest when they have like the band Living Color played there. And a friend of the show, Damon Manx, was there, and the members of Living Color came over and checked out his books, and I think they bought some stuff. What a moment that would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know.
So when I talk to my students who are younger than 63, and they're also at the beginning of their journey, they sit in the classroom, and many times it appears like they expect to be preached to or lectured, and that all I have to do is sit here and listen or absorb or pretend like I'm listening and absorbing, but I don't have to participate. And I, of course, go completely in the opposite direction. I get them involved. I get them dialoguing and discussing things and sharing their challenges so that they just in that open, safe environment begin to realize, oh, I thought I was the only one who, or yeah, I felt like that, or oh, I struggle with that same, and you do too. And so I think that what you've just underscored at the age and the position you are in this experience, because you've been writing for years, is that as human beings, depending on our background, our experiences as people, some of us still carry some of those things, maybe make us hesitate or uncertain about things, and or feeling like we don't belong in a group where actually, yeah, we do. But we just have to realize that we have to learn that. And so as you're pretty much an example of finally going, okay, I'm going in, or I'm stepping out there, and you do it. And best case scenario, you have an experience. Worst case scenario, you
Learn something.
heads, and you keep right on keeping on. And I think that
I'd give some advice, some additional advice.
okay. So a couple of things, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I think it's time. One, if you do go to a writers convention and you're a writer, or a comic illustrators convention and you're a comic illustrator, whatever it is, you know, fill in your art here. Remember that it's a work event. There were so many people there that were dressed professionally. And I mean, like Alex and I are dressed now. Some people got dressed in thematic costumes, still looked professional. Some people didn't. So you could see like fans versus the professionals. So if you want to be seen as a professional, dress. Now, I didn't dress up, but I tend to wear V-neck t-shirts. Right, the round ones bother me nowadays. So I wore that, and I had a long sleeve, several long sleeve shirts that I would roll up.
Button-up shirts.
Yeah, I would button up, and I would button it up to the same place, and then you'd see the t-shirt underneath. I think it was variations of jeans, beige pants, but that didn't matter as much to me because usually you see from here up. But people always got the same basic look from me, whether it was a blue denim or a black shirt, or I'm trying to think, there was a dark blue shirt, but they were collared, buttoned down, rolled up. They were the same basic image. So it didn't look like you were wearing the same clothes all weekend, but you were more easily recognizable from day to day, you know?
So dress appropriately, right?
Dress appropriately, even if I was in the bar.
For religious purposes.
For religious purposes, I limited myself to one sacrament. You know, so it's not, let's do shots. It's not that kind of event. There are people who built their reputations on that. But I watched all those people this weekend very carefully. They weren't rocking that anymore. So you can have fun, but it's a more subtle socializing.
Okay.
Also, I probably plan, you can get the list of events beforehand. And the problem that you have to prepare for those of you who've never been at a con, the tendency is, oh, I want to go see that and that and that, and they're all at the same time. So the more time you have to look at that and make your decisions, fine. Another great technique, I'm not sure, Alex, you've done this in the past too. If you're not sure about a panel, go sit in one of the chairs nearest the open door.
Yeah.
You could do a sneaky Pete out the door,
Yeah.
little Irish goodbye, and
Yeah.
go to another one and try that out.
I would say taking the creme de la creme from your statement though is get out there and try. Get
Yeah,
out there and
try.
do
Yeah.
and represent, you know, put your best foot forward.
Rebecca Cuppert reminded me to do something. There she is. I'm sitting next to her watching a panel, and she's got her notebook, and she's got beautiful handwriting, by the way, but she's writing her notes, and I'm like, damn, I should. And I just wrote on this back of the schedules, but still, notes are notes. You don't have to write down everything everybody says, but the rule of thumb is, oh, I didn't know that. I want to know it. Write it down so you can look back at it. Take a lot of pictures, and don't hesitate to take a picture with yourself in it.
So you can prove you were there.
My favorite picture of the whole weekend, and since we're going to kind of segue into the next thing, it fits that. Remember, I said earlier in the episode that Sarah Tantlinger had inspired this.
Right,
Well,
the poet, yes.
She was there. Well, she's a poet. She writes prose, horror, poetry. She does a bunch of stuff, but yes. So she was there, 10 feet away from me. And I remember, I am a mature, experienced, cultured 63-year-old man. And I'm sitting there, and this girl's probably in her late 20s, early 30s. And she's just talking with some people, very nice. And I'm like, oh my God, should I tell her? Do you think it's appropriate? In my head, is it appropriate to go? What I wanted to do was present her a copy as a way of thank you. And I had autographed it in there. She didn't give credit. Who cares about my autograph? But anyway.
Folks, did you hear that? Keep going.
You have seen people who did care. I remember you videotaped that one kid with a blackjack. But yes, I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to experience it. I have to be careful because he's keeping me on the up and up. I went over to her and I said, Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt. And she's, no. And I said, I'm Chris Ryan. And she got all excited. She said, we talked to Denver. And I said, yes. I said, this is it. You inspired me. If it's okay with you, I wanted to give you a copy just to say thanks, because it's my first professionally published collection of poetry, and it all started with your reading, and thank you so much. Now, here's an example of amazing grace. One, she was thrilled. She said, oh, yes, I definitely want it. And she took it and she said, thank you. I can't wait to read it. There's a difference between thank you very much. And that would have been gracious enough. But to share my thrill. And then her friend says, can we take a picture? So I gave her my phone and they took a picture. And that's my favorite picture, me and Sarah.
There you go.
And it was just, it's those little moments. So there you go.
Give and take, give and take. So we mentioned it's been a privilege. Let's talk about it's been a privilege.
It has been. And we're talking about this thing right here. It's been a privilege. Two different people. Now, you and Richard Brundage, an actor of mine, both said that you could see it as a one-man show. But I was sitting with the legendary Teal James Glenn.
I remember
at the table. And Carol, by the way, Carol Geisander won a Stoker Award for her editorial work on
Go Carol.
Discontinue Use. I have to get the whole name of it, but it was a collection. She and 4 other women, I think, had all been nominated for Best Story. I think it was in Denver. They said we should do something together. This was just when Roe versus Wade was being revoked and women's rights were being restricted. So they wrote connected series of short stories where women have their say, and they are time travelers and all this sort of stuff. Fascinating way to do a collection. She got Stoker, and it was really
Great,
beautiful. A few
great.
other people I know got Stokers, and that's
Right.
fantastic.
Teal James
Congratulations,
Glenn.
John, and all them.
Teal,
Huh?
Teal was that,
Um,
something
so
to do with privilege.
Teal leans over to me and he says, "You should be up the next year for it's been a privilege, and you better submit it to the jurors." And I was like, I didn't think an author can submit their own work. And you can't in general, but you can to the juries for that. It's a whole thing. And I spoke to Linda Addison about it. I said, if that was going to happen, I would want to do it properly. And she said she would send me a guideline that she had written, which was a positive thing as well. She wanted to know about some of the stuff. I wound up giving her a copy of Privilege, etc. And she just wrote and said, they should get one.
Ooh,
So I'm not
ooh.
bragging. I'm
No,
not
no,
saying
you're
this is
acknowledging.
what should happen. What
Yeah.
I am saying is it was shocking.
If
But something you can ignore.
what is true?
Well, that it deserves a Stoker. I'm just not at that level yet.
Okay, what do you mean?
To
You're
say
not
I believe it's a great piece of work.
okay.
I'm very proud of it. I'm not the person that goes around and says, I better win and I need to.
But you
That's not
weren't,
me at
and
all.
you
And
didn't,
I wasn't, which is
and
why I
and
felt
and,
I
and
could speak about it.
you get balloons. You were looking down, you didn't see him. Now it's too late. Anyway, people
You got to
said
stick your fingers up again.
two people said it should. That's their opinion, which you have no say about.
Cool.
All right, yay, yay. Let's go for it from there. So,
There it is. Discontinue if death ensues. Beyond and
ah,
Within. Carol Geisander, and it's got several great people in it.
okay, all right.
She's a different kind of editor. I'm more of a nurturing. I do things ass backwards. I speak with people and I get their vibe. And if the vibe is just right, then I start talking about Soul Scream. If the
Mhm.
vibe continues right, then I ask about what they're writing. And if the vibe is still right, they've passed the audition. And then I say, you should send something my way.
Let's go back. Go back.
So,
I'm going back to privilege.
yes, sir.
So, for those of you who don't know, because you haven't read the book or haven't been aware of the book and its existence, it's a journal. It's written as a journal that was,
Poetry journaling,
yes, well, it's a journal, right? In verse, in poetic terms, written by a person who is a serial killer.
sociopath.
And it is telling his story. So, what we have here, folks, is we have a narrative told in first person through not only poetry, but several different styles of poetry, which reflect on the character's frame of mind at a given time.
Yes.
Right. So I say that, shut up, I'm not finished. I'm praising you here. I say that because many writers look at their characters in their stories. And again, we're talking about the people who really, put some time in. They get familiar with each character and they write in that character's voice as the character moves through the story. Whereas what you did was created a character with a fragmented personality.
Yes.
So you had to not only get to know this character, but then you had to go and get to know the fragmented moments or segments of this character's mind, how they saw the world at different times, how they saw themselves at different times, and how they expressed that in those different voices, almost like Sybil, with multiple personalities. And I find that that's an incredible challenge. It's one of those moments when I read the book, I went, why the hell didn't I do this? Doesn't mean that I would have done it as well as Chris did. I just sat there going, why the hell didn't I think of this? And then when I finished it was the time that I came up with the remark about it being an excellent piece for an actor to do as a one person show, a one man show, one woman show, one them or they show, because it challenges you as that kind of an artist to do all the things I just said you did as a writer. And then on stage to be able to convey that. to
Yeah.
take us into that person's life experience. So I applaud you in terms of your effort on that. And I find it particularly funny because, again, folks, you heard him talk about sequestering and being timid or having imposter syndrome and all these other things, which might indicate a certain sense of insecurity or fear or something about taking on X. But then, balls to the hot iron, you went in there and you didn't just write a guy who goes out and kills people. You did this, which is a
Yeah.
challenge and a half. And I really applaud you. And as I said to you several times now, of all the things that I have read of yours, I find this is the most fascinating. I think it is one of the best written pieces you've done. But I also think it is by far the most spectacular task you've ever taken on as a writer, and I really applaud how well you handled it.
Well, I appreciate it, and I don't want to downplay my efforts there because it was. But a key thing that I think writers might be able to take away is that I wasn't ever thinking about it on exterior terms.
Mm-hmm.
What I did instead was, well, we talked about the moment of inspiration where it was like 4 or 5 poems as Sarah was reading, and I was paying attention to Sarah, but this was very insistent that I write this. And when I read it back, I was sure it was going to be gibberish, but the voice was there. It was very clear. And it bugged me. It followed me around the house and, it was bothering me when I was doing dishes and stuff.
Stephen King. Yep.
Best idea wins, right? Well, this one was really, really insistent. So what I did was I followed the voice and I got to know the character as I was writing.
Mm.
As the story revealed itself, that was kind of what was happening as they went into different situations that he was writing into the journal. I started realizing that, well, that kind of requires a different style. Most of it is in this kind of loose, free verse, not very worried about exterior or interior rhyme or meter. It was more about the emotional beat of the lines and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then he got really nervous at one point. And I said, well, how would he write when he was really nervous? Hilariously, he kind of drops like almost like hip hop, not good hip hop, because that's part of his characterization. One, he thinks he's a lot better than he is, and two, he is purely rich white privilege. So he's not of the street. This guy did not grow up listening to
Any of the great hip hop
anybody,
people.
Tribe
Yeah,
Called
right.
Quest, anybody.
Yeah.
So his rhymes are like real fundamental hip hop as opposed to, right? Even when he fails at something, he's revealing a bit more of his personality. And then when I realized he had other personalities within himself,
Mm.
well, they would require different structures, and then I was playing, how can I reflect the emotions? There's 2 parts where he gets very depressed because he's not getting any headlines and he can't be going out and finding someone. And they start with you ever hear someone who's really depressed and it's just yes or no answers.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with that beat and then expanded it as he reconvinced himself of his holy mission. So they became very big. Another one, it just felt like it needed a formal and fancy moment. So I researched the proper way to do a Fibonacci, or I may not even have that word right. Then there was paired because the second personality started coming out. And then when he was really breaking down, well, he couldn't be coherent. What is the most just little flashes of consciousness? Haiku,
Mm.
right? Haiku isn't designed to be clear, concise. It's impressionistic words that together have an effect, right? So we got to play with that. Then we got to play interior arguments between he and the other even darker self. Imagine a sociopath with a darker personality underneath. Then I realized somewhere in there that this is New York City. There's going to be cops. Somebody's going to be researching this and investigating this. I happen to know a pair of detectives from a couple of novels I wrote. So without naming their names, they're the ones who are investigating, because it would be appropriate for the kind of cases they take. But his ego cannot handle that. So he can't even refer to them as detectives. They become defectives in his mind. And we got to play with all of that. And it became very organic. So my advice is, yes, serve the story, but also let the character live and breathe and kind of show you where they live, and see where that takes you.
And it's funny you should say that, because we can segue right into sort of a collaborative piece, in that you are the publisher, yes, of Sherlock Holmes and the Hands of Othello, written by Alex
Simmons.
Written by me, yeah. And this is a piece that I wrote a number of years ago and was produced off Broadway. And then there have been some college and university performances and productions done of it off and on throughout the past few years. And it was published in an anthology. When I wrote that play, I originally started writing it as a vehicle for myself as an actor. I wrote a character in there that I was going to portray. But the more readings that I did of the play, and the more I got into the spine of the story, which is really, I created a Holmes investigation wrapped around incidents that occurred to the family of Ira Aldridge in real world. Ira Aldridge was a black actor from New York in the 1800s who wound up in Europe, who went to Europe and continued to perform, in particular Shakespeare, and became a continental celebrity. So this was real, and I loved what he had accomplished. But then I read even more about what happened to him after he died and what happened to his family. And I said, oh, there's a conspiracy here, or at least it's material for exploring it as a conspiracy. So I wrote this Holmes piece around it. And so the more readings and the more involved I got in writing it, the more I began to realize that I can't be an actor trying to knock something out so that I can get on stage with it. I had to, as Chris is so fond of saying, serve the story. The story was important to me. It was important that I get it as right as I possibly could, to get the voices right, the accents right, to get the research right. And so I put in 5 years of working on that, rewrites and rewrites and rewrites and readings, and eventually it was produced. So having done all that, I was completely stunned beyond belief when an audience member contacted me after seeing the production and said, I'm putting together this anthology of Black playwrights, and I'd like to include your piece. And I'm thinking, I've written maybe 2, 3 plays in my life. Probably going to be some university thing, with 6 other people that I've never heard of. And that's fine. I'm really kind of touched by that. Thank you very much.
Alex Simmons scoop.
Yeah. Zebop Maruda,
The Zebop Maruda's in
there
there.
you go. So then I get a sort of a rough draft of the thing and the cover, and I'm reading the other writers who are going to be in this anthology. And there's Ed Bullen and Amiri Baraka.
Yeah.
A couple of other names, including the gentleman who's putting it together. And then I read also August Wilson, at that time, a play on Broadway. And I'm going, whoa, there's got to be a mistake here. And I got in touch with William Branch, as the man who was doing this. I said, Mr. Branch, I just want to be clear. You're going to include I'm not really a playwright. I've only written, and he shut it right down. He shut it right down.
He pulled an Alex Simmons on you?
Yes, he did.
How'd you like being Chris Ryan for a while?
It's why I can relate when you say certain things. It's crazy because I know what I thought of me, but I had no idea what others thought. And more importantly, there's this thing that goes through your head where you're thinking, somehow I'm fooling people, somehow I'm conning people. But what you really have to recognize, and it's hard, is that the work that you did spoke. and they heard it, and this is their reaction.
Right.
It's you didn't con anybody by getting somebody else to write the play and then putting your name on it. I did put in the 5 years on this. I did do the research, and this is the reaction. Son of a, yeah,
Yeah.
that was that. And then years go by, as you know, again, a few professional readings, and then this bizarre dude with a receding hairline decides,
Receding, it
yeah,
has retreated.
yeah.
I have a 9 head.
Use that wedge. And you said, I'd like to publish
Well,
your play again.
I want to be clear that I really love Black Thunder. And I love that you're in Black Thunder with all those people. But it's been a while and it exists. And those who know it can find it. You can probably still find it on Barnes and Noble, maybe the Zon or eBay. There's a bunch of different places you can get it. And it's well worth buying. But I really like the play. And the reason I like it is because, yes, it's Sherlock Holmes, but every other character in the play has a right to be there. You know what I'm saying? It's not Sherlock Holmes and the peasants. You know, and he's the visitor to their world, right? It's this theater kind of community, and this is not the 7% solution. The addiction he has is to a mystery, and he sees it and wants to do something. He's an artist in that way. That's one of the things I really love about Sherlock Holmes is that, it's not, well, I'm doing this for the pension. None of that ever comes into the conversation. It's him trying to figure things out, trying to figure the world out, and he's really good at it. And he goes and immerses himself in this world, and it's a very diverse world.
There's the African American troop that comes over.
Right.
There's that. You're right. And then there's
There's some loyalty,
right.
and that's the result of serving the story. And I just thought it deserves to have a place in Black Thunder and a life of its own. And that's what I pitched to you.
Yep, and that's what he did, and that's why it exists, and it is now on Amazon.
There it is. And can we take a minute to talk about what Matt Wilderson did with this cover? Right, this is the second cover.
Let me say this about that first. I do want to say that in terms of a teachable moment, because you're so good at that, and you were just mentioning the different characters that are in the piece. A lot of times people get stuck on writing because they want whatever's going to come out of their head onto the keyboards or onto that paper with pen, it's got to be perfect. So they don't write until it's perfect in their head. Then they put it down because they expect it to be perfect because obviously that's the only thing they're ever going to write. Wrong. Literally, for that play, and again, 5 years, rewrites, they are your friends. I started by writing the story and the lines and the things that I heard in my head for the characters to say, period. Just getting the verbiage out. It was a part of the rewriting process over those years of fine tuning the stylings. How would Sir Lawrence speak versus how Thomas Kane spoke versus how Holmes spoke, fine tuning those things, getting the accents as close to correct, proper, authentic as possible. Those were all done in increments over time. The first and most important thing is to get the story out of your head and down onto a surface so you can look at it and exhale and then go to work to turn it into whatever that finished project is supposed to look like.
It's a great example of what we always preach on this show, which is, it's my credo. This is a fine example of letting it suck.
Mm-hmm.
Get the first draft out so you have the essence and the energy of that first story. And then you can trim, and then you can, I mean, there's such a different beauty to the second. The first step is, it's kind of the ultimate moment of romance where it's all excitement and build up and ta-da! And that's the first draft. And then you're blessed when you read back and say, there's something here. That's the embryo. That's the zygote. And then with each draft, it develops, right? And it's a baby. You can feel the kicks. You can feel, And then, of course, there's labor that's trying to get a publisher, and the actual person getting it out there, and making sure it's safe, and counting the fingers and the toes and all that. And we've gone through that with this one, making sure all the toes and fingers were all right. And now it's out in the world, and we're trying to make sure it's safe and gets out there and makes friends, and gets the people who finds its community, which is hopefully the readers who like it, maybe a couple of show producers, which yeah, that's part of it. And I really thought that this was a piece that, anyone who's ever enjoyed Sherlock Holmes, this would be among the easiest Sherlock Holmes adventures to enjoy. The language, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is fantastic. Of course he is. No, spot of tea, please. Alex is more direct than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is, and more accessible. It's not that it's hard to read his work. It isn't. It's, 100 years old or something now, but Alex's is not.
I was
not
here
to
when
say
he
it's
wrote it, but
I'm not to say it's better than. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying if you have any interest in Sherlock Holmes, I would say that this is a pretty good entry-level drug, gateway drug to Sherlock Holmes. Hands of Othello, here it is. Yeah, and there's something in there for everybody, and I really am excited that it exists and it's out there. I would like to ask you before we move on from here is, what are your takeaways? You were shocked almost to Chris Reinian behavior with Black Thunder. But then you got this thing, and what was this experience like for you? And I'm not looking for compliments. No one learns anything from that. What was it for you? How do you like it when you look on the shelf and there it is?
I'll go a little behind the scenes here and say, one, it was kind of strange to me that I hadn't thought about getting it back out there again. And then when you brought it up, I'm thinking, why hadn't you thought about getting it back out there again? And that caused me to do some soul searching.
Did you search for your soul?
I found part of it, yeah.
Cool. Was it a train?
It was in the bottom drawer. But no, seriously, why hadn't I? I mean, considering all the work that I put into it, and blah, 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 and there's a lot more I could say about that. That would be an episode all by itself. But what I will say is part of it is very interesting. Part of it is it had a certain life experience, and then it didn't go in the directions that some folks thought it would.
Okay.
And so they sort of walked away. And, as I said, it had received several other university productions and things like that. And some of the moments in those productions, I was happy to see them. As a matter of fact, one time, Holmes was played by a Latino young man in his late 20s. And in rehearsal, this young man who I've lost track of, he asked me questions about the character. He asked me questions about the lines. He would come to me during rehearsals and sit and discuss the character. As far as I was concerned, this was a young actor who wanted to get it as right as he possibly could. And so when he went up there, I enjoyed the heck out of it. So it didn't matter to me.
Oh, yeah.
I remembered those moments, but I also looked at them, came to this realization. I also looked at them as well. That was wonderful, and that was in the past, and I guess that's it. And I guess some part of me had said, it's lived the life it was meant to live, and that's it.
Then Dr. Frankenstein showed up.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
it is alive.
When you said what you said, and I realized, that you were sincere about it, and I started to do what I stopped you from doing a moment ago. I started to actually find myself looking for words to try and talk you out of it. Like, Chris, are you sure you want? And some part of me went, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you doing? And that caused me to do some soul searching. So as I said, I found some of the soul. I feel better about it. Moving forward from there, it was a hoot working on it with you. It's a couple of faux pas. One of them is a big one for me. I somehow, and I still don't know how, slipped you the wrong version of the first act, or at least several scenes of the first act, and didn't catch it. And I don't know what was that about, but okay, we caught it late, but we caught it. And you were about to mention the cover, and I remember your first draft of a cover. And I remember thinking, and forgive me, Chris, because I do love you. You're like a brother to me.
It didn't work, the first cover.
Well, that's where I'm going.
It didn't
I
work.
was looking at it and I was going, I know he's trying and we can make this work. He'll get it. It'll come out. Well,
I mean, the concept, if we had gotten the right person, was okay, but it didn't work. And it was really great to be able to say to each other, let's try it again.
Yeah. And here's the thing that I find really spectacular is I looked at the original design and yeah, this is a striking cover.
It really is.
I look at that cover and I know certain things behind the culmination of that cover. And even knowing that, I'm going, yeah, it's great for this and it's great for that. But just looking at it, that's a striking cover.
Well, and again, Matt Wilds, and one of the great things about him is that I might give him some starter materials. But then I have complete faith that he'll go further. Well, hello, wife. Thank you. Wife got me a little something to drink.
Oh, that's nice of her.
She is indeed glorious. She's quick. She's quick too. She just zipped right back out there.
Here's what I'm going to say right now, folks. I know this episode is going a lot longer than we normally do. So if you want to take a break and all that, fine. But we're going to continue for a little bit longer. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I was trying to look for a central image. And your godson owns this sword. So I asked him
which is why
how about that for a conversation? How about that for a conversation? Can I borrow your sword?
Verily, Dad.
Yes. Well, sure, Dad. Theatrical blood. That's what's dripped on the side very carefully. But I just put it on a black, it was the tablecloth that I use at conventions. So I just put it on there. But as you can see, it's not a black background.
No.
All of this subtle shading and colorization is Matt's doing. And he redid the logo. And, I had suggested something like this and some kind of banner, but he gave it all of this, all those little things. And I like the style of, it's just, he really gave it a lot of, and for those of you who read the play, you'll get this image. But again, that was, I went to the dollar store and bought an ashtray. I couldn't believe and I don't even know if it's an official ashtray, but it looked like what I needed.
Yep.
And then just did some prop paper that, again, if you read the play, you'll understand what it is.
So the lesson from this, folks, is just do.
It's a Robert Rodriguez lesson. Mariachi and
all
the different other films he
Rebel
did.
Without a Crew.
Right. Well, that book, it's a great book. If you want to learn how to do things for yourself, read that book.
Robert Rodriguez.
What he said was, people say, write what you know and all that sort of stuff. He says, shoot what you have. And for El Mariachi, he had a mariachi style guitar. He had a lot of desert in where he was living. He had a turtle.
Yep.
And some of the theatrical guns and that kind of stuff. And he built the story from what he had. For having read it, I know the significance of the sword and the significance of the back cover image.
And we're not going to make too much out of that now because
yes. And I knew I could present something to Matt that he could then work with. And he's not exorbitant. So you can find people who can help you out with that. But the idea is you have enough right around you with what's in here and what's in here and what you've read and taught yourself and all that stuff to tell your damn story. And hopefully today, just talking about these two things, we're able to inspire in you the confidence to move past imposter syndrome and fulfill your own heart with this stuff. How's that sound?
The last thing.
It's the last thing.
Yes.
It's the last thing he said. Looking very
Walk your
I
talk.
know.
Yeah, there
Yes,
you go.
yes. It's a really interesting phenomena going on over in that side of the screen. One of the things that I always brag about Alex is he is the legendary creator of Blackjack. And we did some projects together. It took me 20 years to get permission to write him, but we eventually got a bunch of projects together. But then lo and behold, if you go on to Alex's social media, especially this week, things are happening with Blackjack. So we must find out from Alex
Well,
what's going on. And then I have a few questions.
yeah. All right. So I will start out by saying that, we started out talking about getting out there, Stoker Con, getting back on the trail and going to events and taking charge of your properties, your creations, because you are the greatest advocate for the work that you do. That's something to try and remember and live by. I've had some wonderful experiences with Blackjack. Chris has been a part of that, as have several other wonderful people that I've had the good fortune of knowing for years. There's even a wonderful producer out in LA who's been working tirelessly to lock in a deal for an animated piece, although we wouldn't walk away from a feature film or live action production. But anyway, so there's all these things happening off on the sidebars. But because of what Chris did with Sherlock Holmes and getting me to start thinking about why have I let certain things sit on the side, as we were moving and promoting and pushing to get the Holmes piece ready, I'm looking at the Blackjack stuff that's already out there. But I'm also looking at something that we've talked about, which is, saving your ideas, stockpiling your ideas. I have like 5 pages of plots and concepts for Blackjack stories. Some of them are as old as the character himself. And I am also aware that, there's books that are out there that people, I will run into people, oh, I mean, I love shooters, or I love Blackjack, there came a dark hunter. When are you going to do more Blackjack? When are you going to do more Blackjack? And part of it has been there's a novel that I want to work on that I've started on, but it's going to take a while. There's a couple of short stories that I've gotten various degrees of unfinished. And I wanted to get some things out there. I wanted to start the ball rolling down the hill, build up momentum, all of that. And again, thinking about why am I not actively, more proactively promoting the things that I love, the things that I created that I love and still feel very strongly about. And I'll even go a little political and say, in particular at this time,
Oh, yeah.
with the things that we're going through in this country, I don't know where
Uh,
else you're listening, but in this one,
That was one of my reasons for pushing to publish Sherlock
yeah,
Holmes thing.
yeah.
Yeah. You want to
It's
ban
it's a
stuff? Nah.
it's a necessity. It's a necessity to not only get the stories, our stories out there, but to not let those who've come before be forgotten or erased
Mhm.
conveniently.
Yeah.
And so that means, yes, there should be biographies and things like that done, and articles and documentaries done. But also, we can bring knowledge of these characters forth through our fiction as well. And so, like I said, the Sherlock Holmes play has Ira Aldridge, who was an actual person who did do a number of the things that are referenced in the play. And his family did go through some of the suspicious conspiratorial things that happened to them, that I mentioned that Holmes is dealing with in the play. So for Blackjack, a lot of times there are things that are referenced from out of history, or it's about showing not only Black people, but people of different nationalities and cultures and races and so forth, where their contributions were, or how they were mistreated, or just about their slice of life. And I had these stories, plus I decided, okay, I'm going to grab one or two. Now I'm going to grab three. I worked up some, well, maybe four. Finally, I decided I was going to do six. I was going to do
Jesus.
six mini stories, MINI, shortest short stories,
You got a word count that you're targeting?
between 1 to 5,000 words.
Okay.
Yeah. And that they're going to be released one a month starting July.
Where?
The first one's going to be for free. The other five are going to be a very nominal fee, which I'm still developing, so I won't announce that right now. But the landing page
$30,000.
will be, yeah, and 30,000 pounds of banana, let's hear it for Harry Chapin. The landing page will go live in 4 more days. The landing page will go live, and then people can see whatever the pricing and stuff is going to be and be able to sign up for it if they want, all that good stuff. But I'm doing this for me. This is sort of also like what I did 2 years ago when I did a short story a month. I want to
But
get,
this is going to be public
yes, I'm going to get these stories out. I'm back in the saddle with a character that I really enjoy and I'm really
and
excited about.
deserves as many stories as you can get out of your blood.
Yep, yep. I'm back in the saddle. Let's ride.
That's
So
cool.
that's part of that is to say again, as you called him, Chris, a teachable moment. We do
So,
advocate for ourselves. We
yeah,
do need
must.
to recognize the value of, even if you're an aspiring or emerging writer, you have a story you want to tell. You have
True.
a story you want to share. You have something you want to say.
Yes.
First and foremost, it does not have to be, and here's the false word, the illusionary word, perfect. Perfect does not enter the equation. You want it to be as good as you can possibly get it.
What I like instead of perfect,
Good.
passion. It has to
Passionate.
passion.
So passionate, authentic, genuine, anything that says, get the story out, get it
Yeah.
out of your
Yeah.
head. That's the first thing. Get it out of your head down onto a surface. Finish it. That's the second thing. Don't keep
But
starting
just
stories.
finish it, finish the first draft. We're being very careful to not dissuade people by,
Yeah, but
again,
and I know, and
done.
you and I are on the same page with
Right.
this. I am saying finish it. And then where I was going with that is literally get it out of your head, get the words down on paper on a keyboard, just get it, as you said, let it suck. Just get it out. That's the second step. Then revisions, revisiting the story, tweaking it, discovering new things about it, removing what is unnecessary, adding what is until it feels even better to you. These are 3 steps. I'm not going to talk to you about publishing or anything like that. I'm talking primarily about you valuing the ideas and the passion and the stories and the feelings that you want to share. Value that. Give yourself the gift of permission to tell your damn stories.
There you go.
What you do with them after, that's another
Is a
episode, that's
whole
another
nother
day,
episode.
that's a whole nother smoke. But at least telling the stories, and as Chris and I have revealed in this particular episode, there are fears, there are discomforts, there are awkward moments, there are embarrassing moments, there are moments when we don't trust ourselves or we don't trust the very work that we've already produced. But ultimately, we got past a lot of that
Yeah.
because we did complete things. We did get things published, whether we did it ourselves or other people did it. We did put it out there. And ultimately, we got to have the experience of having other people read those stories and be touched or affected by it or enjoy it in some way, shape, or form. And that's a gift that we get to give to other people. It doesn't say anything about our ego being all out there. It's, wow, you mean I made you laugh? Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so glad. Oh, it reminded you of somebody that you cared about? I'm so happy. Oh, you've been through that and you felt less alone? Wonderful. Those are blessings. Long episode. You want to tell a story, tell it. And everything else falls in after that with whatever amount of effort you can put to it. Amen. Amen.
All
Okay,
right.
this was a long episode, but I really hope folks got
It's well worth it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your time, and we hope that we're of some service, because ultimately, that's what we're here for. Be of
Absolutely.
service to each other, everybody.
So,
Like and subscribe.
yes, and or get us a coffee. I'll drink it.
You can drink it. I'll stick with a tea.
Take care,
Bye,
everybody.
Peace. Live long and prosper.
Yeah, all that.